But when it comes to abstract art, I really do have a liking for it for a lot of reasons. One reason is that it pushes things forward. Rationale, the why, it's a very pixelated image here, but you get the idea of my chart. First of all, why do you make the painting? Why make a painting in the first place? The method, of course, how is important. And then the materials, what with? Or with what? So why, how, and what? These are very essential questions. Like an artist might question the beginning points first to know why they're making a painting. So an abstract painter can say, okay, the outcome that I want is an amazing image that people will pay, tons of money for. And so it's got to be a fine produced work of art that's got form, color, shape, all the things that we need to combine in a novel way. And that might be their reason, but it might be better to have a personal connection to it. So an abstract artist, even them, they might consider, what is the root point of their departure? Because it's not about just form, color, shape, and combining all of these things. You kind of have to put a unique spin on it in order to make something that's never existed before. A lot of artists just repeat things that have been done before. They're just unaware that they're repeating other things. So that's why I have that. This is a sort of starting point. And then, let me zoom out a little bit on my chart here. A little less pixely. So I have all these things that I want to tackle as themes in abstract art. And basically, I'm just going to go back in art history just a bit. So to start here, we have a painting of a tree by Piet Mondrian, circa 1900. So 120 years ago or so, he paints trees. Very typical landscape, looks impressionistic. It has influences from Courbet, Manet, all the painters you'd expect from that time period, French painters of landscapes. Trees are beautiful. He starts to see the patterns in the sky versus tree, and so he's alternately painting the gaps between the branches, which is the sky, and the branches themselves. So he's doing this interplay and push and pull, which is going to help him later on. Little does he know it, because art is about to change dramatically as soon as Picasso, Braque, Julio Gonzalez, all these cubists come into play. This is an image where we have a tree just standalone by Piet Mondrian. Very typical. Everyone looks at this, they register it as art, even at the time frame. It might have been brushier and more colorful than a lot of painters would like, but it's still art. It's very understandable as art. Later, he would go on to push that, and basically looking at a cross-section of Piet Mondrian, you see stages of evolution that are really clear. This is why it's good to start for an abstract beginning. Like when abstract painting comes into being, he's really at the beginning. He starts out painting trees, like everybody does in a way. This is a Mondrian drawing of a tree. It's very loose, it's a little bit looser, less constrained. He's trying to find the pattern of the branches. And so it's looking for order within the chaos, looking for chaos within the order. Ultimately, that's what it boils down to. That's really my returning theme for all abstract painting. This is a painting that he then goes on to do after he's seen what Picasso and Braque have done. So no longer is he painting a tree per se, he's painting the shapes that the tree carves into space. So it's all about shape, contrast. He's still kind of focusing on sky versus branches and that interplay between what's behind and what's in front, the push and pull of them. And we can see here that we have a further departure. So suddenly, is that a tree anymore? It begs the question, right? I can definitely see elements that connect to the last painting. Like if I go back and forth, really it is interesting to see. It's the same thing, essentially. He's just cleaned it up a little bit. He's simplified it. But there's nothing simple about this painting. It's still very complicated. It's just gone down a little bit from reality to be just the lines themselves and the colors. And then if you look at the span of his career, a cross-section of each of his periods of development, you realize, oh, there actually is a connection between abstract art and realistic art. And it's right there in front of us, right? We can see how this artist evolved over time, and it's a good way for us to go. Let's move forward a little bit. So really, where does abstract form come from? Nature itself. So this is a book that I have, The Geometry of Art and Life. The spiral of the shell is highly mathematical. You can write equations that map this out. It's complicated stuff, I'm not privy to all the math, but I know that a seashell has that capacity, right? And that's just nature everywhere. So Islamic artists start to notice this, early mathematicians, they start to do patterns and geometry in their artwork. It becomes more essential in Islamic art because they don't want to depict things for their religious reasons, so they don't paint pictures of people, they paint the geometry, which they're allowed to paint. They're not allowed to actually represent people, gods, things like that. In any event, moving forward, math equation for a face, right? You can see that it's actually in nature, right? If we extract something from nature, like an engineer, we can map out a prototype, and suddenly we have abstract art right there in front of us. So this is from nature, which is kind of great. And it's in that book. This is taken from the Geometry of Art and Life. Also from the Geometry of Art and Life, to point to art history. Is it new? Has it existed? It's been there since the beginning. Strangely enough, geometry has its hand in everything. And you have Leonardo da Vinci pushing it a lot further. He's got an advanced rendering skill. He conceptualizes all those forms, also taking from nature directly. Remember, he's dissecting people, so it's not as if he's just making up what a person looks like. He's tearing apart a person and then drawing the person. So we can see a real body in front of us, and you see real lines of tendons connected to the vertebrae right there. And it's awesome to see that it is triangles, right? It's geometry. Again, his architecture, just a geometric drawing by Da Vinci, where you see interlaid shapes, the spiraling forms that he's observing in nature, starts to riff on it and try to figure things out mechanically. And so a lot of this work is going to be pretty mathematical. And you can see the human eye is here, situated. He's got diagrams about how things are observed, how light and shade perform on objects. The circle is the perfect form. It has one side. It's a one-sided figure. And here, you'd never expect, but this is a drawing by Leonardo da Vinci in the 16th century. So he's drawing just spheres with circles on them and exploding lines coming outward. Like, what is this thing? This doesn't even really seem to appear in nature, but in a way it does. You know, it's strange. But abstract art has been around forever, the weird element about it. The Russians start to push it further. So this is a Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, a painting where just interlaid simple forms have those points of intersection. You might overlap things, and that's a really simple technique to create space. And it's all with just lines. Another Laszlo Moholy-Nagy in the museum, so you get a sense of the scale. And we can see here just interlaid forms, circles, lines, nothing more. Color, really simple, elegant color. Color changes at those little points. So I might have like a more saturated yellow leading to a less lighter saturated yellow. Color has a big impact. So in the 20th century color theory, Joseph Albers, you've already studied in the course, so you know the specific power that color can have. Artists start to realize it's not just about line and shape and form, but what if I amp up the color? In the Bauhaus, you have all these transitions. So it's actually blending as well. So you can have color blending. This is from a painting that we saw in, I think, Hungary in a museum from the Bauhaus. Mm-hmm. And then here we have a contemporary painter. A little bit pixelated image here, but an excellent one of what a painter might do to push things forward. You know, you can see the geometry, you can see the hard-edged lines, but it's definitely a complex painting. So there's something not too simple about a lot of these, but by the same token, it's just lines and forms. And if we go forward, again, blending, a contemporary painter. These are from the pages of Art Forum magazine, which is sort of like showing us where abstract art is now. It's still there, it's still alive and well. And we can pretty much see also its ties to sculpture, really geometric forms like this one, which are constructed in space. It's got that engineering-like aspect. You can almost just manufacture a painting. Lines, right? Great painter. Great painting. This one's actually the shapes cut out and then reassembled into a geometric form. If you were to do that, obviously you could take a masonite board, saw it up into triangles. Suddenly you have something interesting. And the last painter I'm going to focus on before we get into a demonstration, is Anouka Farouque. Now, Farouque is a painter who studied those color theory works by Joseph Albers that we showed earlier from the Bauhaus color. But she's also realized that opticality is a big part of it. So op art, which was a movement in the 60s, there's a female painter who's a pioneer, Bridget Riley. She was great. Here you have Anouka Farouque painting something really perfectly. The lines are kind of insane. I've got a close-up later on. But this is a geometric principle she's capitalizing on. So not just abstract painting, again, a little pixelated. She's got these little defects and blips in it intentionally so that you can tell, oop, I exited somehow. So is it that one?
Yes.
Okay, let's see if I can go there. And yeah, so I'm back in. These little blips are actually very intentional little moments. You know, those little color things. So it's a defect. It's good that she worked in aberrations because otherwise it's just math, right? It's a perfect mathematical image of circles interlaid on top of circles, which is a moire blur. So a moire blur is when you have like one system of lines. Imagine a bunch of straight lines. I don't know if I can draw on this, but just imagine a bunch of straight lines this way. If I juxtapose another set of lines this way, then I have two systems layered on top of each other. That's called the moire blur. It's a mathematical concept. She's using it to make your eyes vibrate. So like when you watch that, she's slightly shifted a different register
Of the same thing.
of the same thing. And so then you have this repeated pattern which creates that optical blur. You can see it a little bit clearer. I think I've got a close-up one here somewhere. And this is her painting. So to get a sense of how big the paintings are, how impressive they are, she has to operate on this scale. Otherwise, I mean, sometimes she does smaller works, of course, but a lot of times the size of it helps impact you when you come in a room and you see the meticulous lines, the perfect way it's done. And a lot of times it's also done with paint with tape. So you can see here's her setup. It's not like she has just a can of paint and a brush. She's got all these pre-mixed colors, numbered, systematized. She's working in a really ordered way. Look at her brushes, right? Everything is set up for success here for her precision level. And she's just sort of going with a formula and running with it. I think this is the last image in the slideshow. Yeah. So to end on this one's a little clearer so you can see it. Again, if I really were to go in there, it's very pixelated now, but you can see what it's doing to your eyes. This kind of blur effect, which is happening across the patterns, that's all really optical stuff. It almost makes your eyes hurt if you stare at it long enough, you know, these eye tricks. But then again, she's also got these little blips, these little defects, so you know it's not math. It is art. It is not an accident. So order and chaos, returning to that main central theme that I had.